Hi guys, it's Mary and her books, and I decided to do a quick October wrap up today. When I'm filming is currently Monday the 28th. I just don't think I'll have time the rest of the week, and I did want to do a wrap up to kind of talk about a few things. So I'm doing it a little bit early. It'll probably go up either later today or tomorrow. But there's a few books I wanted to open up for discussion if anyone is interested in the comments below. But let's just get started with what I have read or will have read by the end of this month. The first book I finished was The Woman in Black by Susan Hill, and this was on my TBR, so I did read it, and I enjoyed it. It was probably around a 3.5-star read for me, and that's good. That's a good rating. I didn't love it. It wasn't, to me, super scary. And I felt that some of the decisions made in writing it might have been lazy. Like having a character write down the past, like tell the story that way. To me, it seems like it's been done before, and yes, it works. It is a way to go back and tell an older story in a character's life, but it felt, I hate to say it, but yeah, a little bit lazy. So I did enjoy it, but definitely not a favorite. And I don't remember a ton about the movie with Daniel Radcliffe. I have seen it before. It's been a few years, but as I was reading, it seemed that there were significant changes between what I was reading and the movie I was remembering. So, sometimes that's the way it is, and that's okay, but this just didn't quite do it for me. The second book that I finished was actually an audiobook. It was one that I carried over from September, and it was called Throne of Jade, and it's in the Temeraire, I think I'm saying that right, series by Naomi Novik. It's the second book in that series, and I've listened to both on audio and have just really enjoyed both of them. And Throne of Jade, I felt like continued the story that she started so well in the first book, and these are becoming comfort reads for me. I love Temeraire. I mean, I've fallen in love with a dragon. Like, I want to have a dragon pet or a dragon friend. He is so loyal and he's like the perfect being. And I've really enjoyed these books, and they make me feel good. There's a feeling you get when you read a book like this. It's got a lot of action, it's got a good story, it's got good human characters, but there's something about Temeraire, and the other dragons too, but especially Temeraire, that it does it for me. It's really one of those things that you can't describe unless you've read a book like this, that just makes you feel so good, and I highly recommend it. I hope to get to the third book in the series soon. I may just continue it on audio because I've been enjoying it in that format. So, yeah, Throne of Jade is the name by Naomi Novik. And if I can figure out how to, I will have a picture on the screen somewhere. The third book I finished was also on my TBR, and that was, excuse me, The October Country by Ray Bradbury. And this is another one that I liked. It was not a favorite. I gave this again around 3.5, 4 stars. I think part of I thought this was a novel. And you can see it's not huge, but I thought it was a novel. And it's actually a set of several short stories. Some of the short stories were not great. Some were good. I did probably rate this a little higher than my enjoyment of the stories would warrant, because in the intro, he talked about his history as a writer, Ray Bradbury, and kind of how he found his voice. And one of the things that he did, I just found so interesting. he made a list of nouns and then wrote stories based around those nouns. And a lot of the stories in this book, I believe, possibly came from that type of writing prompt. There's a story called The Dwarf, Skeleton, The Jar, The Lake, The Emissary, The Scythe, The Wind. There's so many different stories that are just a noun. And I thought that was super creative. And if someone is looking to kind of improve their writing skills, I think that might be a great prompt to try, is just one day write down a list of nouns and then try to write a story around one or two of them. I just thought it was a very good recommendation, and for whatever reason, it actually did make me rate this a little bit higher because I felt like it was a kind of a writing workshop almost. Not every story has to be perfect. Part of winning and part of success is failure. And this is an example of not every story is going to win and not every story is going to be a success. And I'm not going to love every story that you write, but you win and you succeed by trying. So, yeah. 3.5, 4 stars. I do recommend it. I enjoy Bradbury. But I thought that was a very interesting. Read the intro if you get a chance. Anyway. The next set of books that I finished, and I have my little list right here to the side. I believe there's 6 of them. I had started listening to the book I'll talk about probably next. But I got sucked into the rabbit hole of some short stories that I found on Kindle Prime. And I believe they're called the Forward series, and the curator of the series is Blake Crouch. If you've read Dark Matter, the Pine series, Blake Crouch is an author, and he has a section at the end of each of these books where he gives the same speech, the same spiel about how he came up with this idea for the Forward series. And he asked several authors to write stories, and Kindle Prime has them available for free to members. You can either read the ebook or listen to it on audio, and I ended up listening to all of these on audio. If you have that option, I say do it. The audio on all of them was great. I thought all of the narrators did a good job. As a whole, I would probably give the Forward series around 4 stars. I did have some issues with a few of the stories, and I had some mixed feelings as well. So the first one that I listened to was called Emergency Skin, and it was written by N.K. Jemisin. And I went back and forth on my rating for this book. Let's see if I can articulate this. I believe that N.K. Jemisin is probably one of the most talented authors writing today. The Broken Earth trilogy, I think books 1 and 2 were groundbreaking. Pun. Unintentional. They were groundbreaking, and they were so thought-provoking, and she told the story in such a way that she was making social commentary without banging it against your head like, this is what you're supposed to think. And I really think that by doing it in the way that she did it, by having just a good story with compelling characters and weaving that social commentary into the story, it was almost perfect. And I believe both of those won the Hugo Award, and well deserved. And I went into book 3 of that series with high expectations because of that, and was disappointed. And I may be a controversial opinion. Some people have loved it, and if they did and you did, good for you. I felt in book 3 she lost her nuance. she lost that weaving into the story, and instead she tried to use a hammer to make her point, and that doesn't work a lot. Again, if it works for you, great. And my problem with authors doing that is I believe they should fully have the right, absolutely, to write whatever they want. But they should include social commentary in their books. That is how we learn, and that is how they can change the world. But to change someone's mind, you have to make it real to them. You know, in book 1, she had a character who was part of an ostracized group. And the way that she really made the point about not treating people that way is by making us care about that character and making us put ourselves in that character's shoes. And I feel like you're going to be so much more successful in making that point by doing it that way than by saying, you know, you really shouldn't treat people that way. You're right. We shouldn't treat people that way. But people don't want to be preached to. And even if I agree with someone, no matter what it is, I don't enjoy being preached to in books. I don't enjoy it. And while I went off on a tangent there, sorry. But while Emergency Skin had the most creative of the forward series, it had the most creative premise and probably the best writing, technically, I didn't enjoy it at all. I felt that she made the bad guys so bad they were not realistic. Who could understand why those bad guys did what they did? They were horrible. And she made the good guys so good that it makes you want to vomit. And that doesn't work. The world is shades of gray. And I find stories more compelling that have bad guys where you see how they got there. You don't agree with it and you think they're horrible, but you see how they got there. And the good guy is the right one. He's the right one, but he also has flaws. Discuss those flaws. And because of that, all those issues where I felt like it just was not what I wanted it to be, I ended up giving that one the lowest rating of 2 stars. And I struggled with that rating because, again, it was the most creative of the stories and probably the best technical writing. I just wanted to bang my head against the wall while I was reading it. I hate that. I will still read anything N.K. Jemisin writes because she's so talented. And these could be outliers for me, and I end up going back to loving her next story. And I hope that's the case. The next one that I read in the series was called Summer Frost, and that was Blake Crouch's story. I actually ended up giving that one 4 stars. I enjoyed it. Not perfect, but I did enjoy it. The next one was from Veronica Roth, and it was called Arc. And I thought it was also pretty creative. And there were definitely things that I felt like she was doing the job of making a point about things, but as part of the story. And I gave that one 3.5, 4 stars as well. The next one was from an author that I had not read before. It was called, I believe his name is Amor Towles. Am I saying that right? And the name of this one is You Have Arrived at Your Destination. And again, about 3.5, 4 stars. Good, but not great. The next one was called Randomized by Andy Weir. Probably close to being tied with the N.K. Jemisin story for my least favorite. I gave it about 2.5 stars. I love The Martian by Andy Weir, but I feel like maybe long-term his writing is going to be hit or miss for me. And this wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great either. And then the final one that I read was called The Last Conversation by Paul Tremblay. Again, I think that's how you say his name. And 3.5, 4 stars, a pretty good one. And again, if I had to rate the forward series as a whole, I'd probably say around 4 stars. I think each of the stories are worthwhile. It's not a huge time commitment, especially if you have Kindle Prime and can read them for free. I would definitely recommend it. And if you have read the N.K. Jemisin story, or you do read it, let me know what you think. Am I reading too much into that? Am I having expectations that are unrealistic? Because I know she's such a great author and I have enjoyed so many of her stories. Am I being unfair? Let me know what you think. Okay, let's get out of the forward series. So the next book that I finished was actually an Agatha Christie. I read one Agatha Christie a month. The name of this one was Destination Unknown, and I finished it a week ago maybe, and I already pretty much don't remember it. Does that ever happen to you? It was okay, and when I finished it, I rated it 3 stars. It just wasn't memorable. And now that I'm sitting here and not remembering anything from it a week later, I wonder, should I lower that rating to 2 stars? Maybe. I usually leave my rating at kind of my gut feeling when I finish a book, but yeah, Destination Unknown by Agatha Christie, not one of her best. And as a side note, if you are interested in reading Agatha Christie, I do have a Facebook Agatha Christie Book Nerds group, and we will be reading her library publication date on. So starting with her earliest published work in January, which is The Mysterious Affair at Styles. We will start that in January and read 1 book per month. So if you're interested in joining, I will have the link in the description box below. The next book that I finished was my audiobook for the month that I had planned, which was Doomakey. And I have to tell you, I'm going to put this down because it's heavy. I don't know why I waited so long to read this one. It was wonderful. It was fantastic. And I can see why some people call this one of their favorites. I've seen people online talk about that they consider Doomakey one of his best. And I don't know that I would necessarily put it in the top 5 of his books, but I can see why. I was engrossed. I listened to it and I just could not stop. I loved it. John Slattery was the narrator and he did a great job. And the story was everything you want from King. It's a lot of character work. He has this way of making you care about these flawed characters and pull for them, and you know bad things are going to happen to them because it's Stephen King, and he builds up this dread, and it's a fun reading experience. I cried listening to this, and that's not easy for an author to do to me. I don't cry very often at books, but I did cry listening to this, and this story is sticking with me. I don't know that I will ever forget it. And the setting in Florida, it was vivid. His descriptions just painted this picture. I'm very punny today. Yeah, because the main character in here explores painting. So I don't know why I'm unintentionally creating these puns today. But Doomakey, if you haven't read Doomakey and you're a King fan, please do. You won't be disappointed. And I can't believe I waited this long. I will definitely be rereading it at some point because I think there's more for me to get from this story. But it was a good one. It was definitely a keeper. Those are all the books I have finished so far. But I have 2 more that I'm going to talk about because I will finish them before the end of the month. The first one is another audiobook, and this was an impulse when I got my Audible credit for this month. I was close to finishing Doohickey at that point and was just so enjoying it that I decided to audio another Stephen King Lacey's story, and before I listened to it, I called this Lizzie's story. I did not know how to say this, but it's Lacey's story. And I said, I've had this one on my TBR for a little while, so let me see. Let me just get it. The narrator was Mare Winningham, and I said, let's just see if I like it. And unless it falls apart, I'm about 60% done with it now. And unless it falls apart, this will be another 5-star Stephen King for me. And I may do a dedicated review video for this one because I've actually taken a lot of notes because it's so interesting. And what I mean by that is, I'm a nerd. I feel like when you read King books, sometimes you wonder what is autobiographical and what isn't, and what had kind of its germination in his real life. The Lacey is the wife of an author who seems king-like, let's just say. And yeah, it's I don't want to spoil anything. I will probably do a spoilery review video where there will be warnings that there are spoilers in that video, but because I want to talk about this and see what other people think about Lacey and her husband and her sister. There's a lot to unpack here. But again, unless it falls apart at the end, this will be a 5-star read for me. And I am so glad that I kind of impulse bought that audiobook. And then the last book that I'm going to finish, I don't have the physical copy up here with me, is one that I'm behind on. I should have finished it a week or 2 ago. And just, again, I've been slumpish when it comes to reading my physical books. But I will finish it, hopefully today or tomorrow. And it's The Haunting of Hill House, which is a reread for me. But as I'm rereading it, I'm discovering that while I remembered the premise, there were a lot of details I had forgotten since I read it originally. So I'm enjoying the reread. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just I'm slumpish. I don't know why, but I will have that one finished this month. Now, the only other book that I have started and not finished, I won't have finished this month, is The Woman in White. And again, enjoying it, but I'm having a hard time every time I pick it up. My attention gets diverted to something else. I'm like, oh, I'm going to go fold laundry. I'm going to do this. And usually that's because I'm not really enjoying the book. In this case, I am. I just can't keep my attention on it. So even though I probably won't finish it this month, I plan to keep reading it, not put it on hold, and try to finish it within the next few weeks. So, pretty good reading month for me. My favorite book of the month is probably going to be Doohickey. We'll see. Lacey's story could get there. I mean, it really could. But, yeah, a Stephen King October. Nothing wrong with that. If you've read any of these books or you have opinions about them, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I'd love to discuss them with you. I can't talk today. It's a Monday. What do you expect? But that's it for October. I will see you probably next week with probably my winter TBR. That's my plan for my next video. But hope you have a great day, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!